Let's take a look at how to create a histogram using our graphing calculator. So here I have a sample of different prices of some laptops. So our first step in creating this is going to be to get our data entered in our calculator. So let's go ahead and do that first. So if you recall, the same way we've made box and whisker plots, hit the stat button and then select edit. And so I already have my data typed in here in list 1. If you could pause the video and get that data typed in for yourself, we'll go from there. So take your time, make sure that data is typed in correctly. I know there's a lot of it this time, so go ahead and get that data typed in. And assuming you've got that, then let's take a look at how to create this on our calculator. So to do this, we're going to hit second y equals and select plot 1. Make sure everything else is turned off. Make sure there's no equations typed in there into y equals, just like we did previously with the box and whisker plot. So plot 1 is turned on at this point. I've selected on. I want to choose the third option here, the histogram, the sort of bar graph looking option right there. So go ahead and make sure that that is selected. And again, we want to make sure our X list says L1. That's where we typed our data in. If you typed your data in elsewhere, use that L number, but I assume you typed your data in L1. Once that's set up, then to actually see the calculator's version of the histogram, let's hit zoom. And then option 9 is zoom stat. That'll make you we'll say a sort of nice window. As we get into a little more detail with this in a little bit, we'll see that the window they made actually isn't that great. But what it is good for is to describe the distribution, which is what I'm asked to do first with this problem. So I can see that my distribution of scores, they're clumped up way up here, and then it kind of trails off down here at the end. Because this graph sort of has that tail end to it, that low part of your graph over here, because it's on the right, we're going to say that this is a positively skewed graph. Your tail is over here to the right, towards the positive end of the numbers. So that's one thing your calculator histogram is good for. Let's go ahead and describe a little bit about this data set, and then we'll look at how to improve this graph and why this graph isn't really that great. So they ask us to describe the center and spread of our data. Now we have a couple options just like we've had for box and whisker plots, either using the mean and standard deviation, or we'll use the median and the interquartile range, depending on what kind of skewed or symmetric distribution we have. Because we already discussed the fact that we are skewed, we're going to choose to use the median and the interquartile range. So there's my justification right there. If our data was symmetric, we would use the mean and standard deviation. So I've got to find these two values. Unfortunately, our histogram doesn't help us find that. We'll have to go back and do one more thing on the calculator. And let's go back to stat, and to find these, the easiest way to do it is to go to calculate, and what we did the other day, select this one variable statistics option. So when you do that, you'll get all the data you could ever want. Make sure you've got L1 in there, and then let's calculate this. And so as we scroll down, we can find lots of information. Our median price for our data set is going to be about $530.50, I should say, for our median price of a laptop, which will describe the center of our data. For our spread of our data, we'll use the interquartile range, which was the Q3 minus Q1 number, so I can get those right from here. So I could say that about half my computer prices are between $451.50 and $665. If you want to subtract those, I could also describe the interquartile range that way. So there's our data. Let's go ahead though and look, there's sort of our analysis, I should say. Let's go ahead and look back at our histogram and see why this calculator created histogram isn't really all that perfect. All right, so I've hit graph to go back to see what my histogram looked like, and here it is right here. If we look at this in more detail, let's take a look at what's going on. Go ahead and hit the trace button. And what this will allow you to do is see the graph in a little more detail. And here's what's going on. You see my cursors right here. I can move left and right to move to the different bins or boxes in my histogram. And here's what these values down at the bottom are telling me. Your min and your max are telling you the low and high end for that bin. So this bin is counting up the prices that are between $374 and less than, but not equal to, $464.17. Sort of a very bizarre set of numbers right there, but I can see that there are 9 laptops that fit that. If I scroll around, I can change those up. I can see between $554 and $644, there's 5. Like I said, it's not very good for practical purposes, I guess I want to say. It's good for describing the distribution, but not for what we want. So let's real quick then talk about how we can adjust this and make a much nicer looking histogram. So I would suggest you hit Window, or I recommend you hit Window for this, and let's just sort of round these values off so they're nicer numbers to work with. So rather than starting from 374, let's just start from $300. And then my highest value, my graph goes up to 1,000. Let's just round off at, or my graph right now goes up to 1,005. Let's just round off at 1,000. I don't think there was anything that was higher than 1,000. So that's my min and my max, my high and low end for my overall graph. Your X scale is then how wide do you want the bin to be? Well, again, they picked a weird $90.17. Let's just make it 100 spaces wide, so we have a nice, neat numbers to work with, okay? When you hit graph now, you'll see that your histogram has changed shapes slightly. And if you hit trace, you'll see that much more conveniently now, we're looking at this bin is all the computers, all the laptops between $300 and $400, there's 4 of them. If I move over between 400 and 500, there's 8 of them, and so on. So a much more convenient graph to work with. It does change the shape of it. However, if you check out the distribution, do we still have the same skew? And I'd say yes. You still have a large clump of the data over here, and then it sort of has this drop off towards the end. So I'd say that our distribution has not changed. We've just changed the shape of it. So you can go ahead and mess around with those numbers as much as you want. You can change the width of those if you want to make them wider or smaller. Just be sure, remember, aim to have about 5 to 7 of these bins when you're done. Right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. So I'd say this is perfect. If you have too few or too many, go ahead and mess with that X scale number so that your bins are either wider or narrower so you get that 5 to 7 total.